that there's a kind of chill that spreads. So as people begin to worry, what if I'm investigated? What if I'm arrested? What if my company gets in trouble? What if my university is singled out? What if my television show is thrown off the air? Then people begin to self-censor. And so you hear less and less clarity about what's going on. You see more and more people fall silent. And it's not as if there's a single date or a moment. There's just a slow slide. And I should say in this, America is not exceptional. America is exceptional in many ways. We have a very unique history. But this is a pattern that we know from other times and other places. And it's clear that the Trump administration also knows this pattern from other times and other places, because what they're doing, they're doing things that have been done before, putting pressure on the president's enemies, investigating people who don't deserve to be investigated, looking through their tax records, their travel records. All that's what Putin's Russia did. That's what Viktor Orban's Hungary did. That's what Erdogan's Turkey does. They use the apparatus of the state, the whole legal system, not just the law enforcement apparatus, to investigate people in order to frighten them. And that process will continue until enough people band together, create coalitions, and say stop.
Angelo, Anne was actually part of a conversation at the Atlantic Festival that they turned into a podcast with Garry Kasparov. And I thought the conversation was very illuminating. And Garry is from the Renew Democracy Initiative. And this is what he had to say on this. Take a listen.
People always say, no, America is not Russia. Absolutely. But, even back in 2016, I wrote that Americans would very soon discover that so many things that they believe were carved in stone, it's actually based on traditions. It's not codified. It would not be just what he could do illegally, but what he can do within his legal powers. Because there's so many loopholes. There's the gray area. So, yes, the Constitution is offering us the means to resist, but it doesn't specifically preclude him of doing things. And also, Donald Trump, give him credit, is a genius of normalizing things that we thought would never happen in this country.
So many things are happening in the gray area, and I would add on top of that the media ecosystem being fractured contributes to the president being able to do this.
Yeah, a lot of what Anne was talking about before, I'm not nearly as smart as Anne is, but she's describing vibes. It's vibes. And that is ultimately what it's about. And what the vibes that they're able to project is be afraid. Go along to get along is better than trying to fight back or to continue what you're doing. And the mechanism or the primary vehicle for executing those vibes is the ecosystem. It is not just the core right-wing media like talk radio and Fox, but then what they've been able to add onto it as a result of that having a center of gravity, which is all these podcasts and these broadcasts and all these wellness and fitness programs. They've all sort of glommed on to this narrative that Trump is selling. And that means it gives them a lot of power, right? Power perceived is power achieved. That's why you're seeing a lot of this theater. It is so much of this is normative, and that's why I think you see so much frustration toward Democratic leadership, because they're not able to recognize that it's not a fight in the traditional political context. We're now battling a fight in this ecosystem. It's a storytelling fight. So who's going to have better theater? Who's going to have better performance? It is scary, and I'm always the downer on this, but it also is a real vulnerability because, as you noted, it's very fractured. And they have to keep what is a very fractured, tense sort of environment together in lockstep. And that is precarious, especially during this period where they have to consolidate power by moving very, very, very fast. And that, to me, is a real opportunity moment that we're in right now. This fractured environment is actually hard to sustain, and we should be able to break it apart, honestly.
I love that thinking, Anne, and I agree very much with it in terms of how do we, sort of take advantage of the opportunities that come to us in a moment like this. But I'm also struck by what you just said about, banding together and creating this sort of this opportunity and saying stop, right? And then you listen to what Garry said in that clip about, what Donald Trump is capable of doing, which, of course, goes to Mr. Corazon's point here. Here's the question. How did the Russian people not figure this out? I mean, seriously, at the end of the day, you go back, you look at what happened after the wall fell. and the markets opened and the world was invited in, and you no longer had to go on the black market to buy blue jeans. You could actually just go order them and wear them. And then suddenly this slip back, Putin comes along and you have this slip back into, okay, no, we're going to tell you how to live, what to believe, and what to do. What happened there? Because I'm seeing this sort of environment being created here where people just, I guess it's not going to happen here thinking, or what? Maybe the Russians thought the same, that we wouldn't go back to what we had before. What do you think happened, what went on there?
So I remember Russia in that period very well. I was working there at the time. And it actually makes us look rather worse, because Russia in the 1990s was genuinely very chaotic. So the end of communism created a economic dislocation, and there was financial chaos, and a lot of people had trouble adjusting to the new system, and there was people's salaries weren't being paid. And so in the early 2000s, when Putin arrived, that was actually coincided with a moment when the economy was starting to become more stable. A lot of people said, we've had enough of this chaos. Let's just have stability and one single power. And of course, there were people who said, no, don't allow this to happen. Among them, Garry Kasparov, who was then a member of the Russian opposition, a leader of the Russian opposition. But, we in America, we don't have that excuse. I mean, we're not living in total chaos. We're not living in the post-communist world. We're not living in a post-conflict situation, which is also a time when you often have people longing for authoritarianism. I think what we're experiencing instead, though, is something maybe the Russian opposition experience and in other countries, which is that because the rules have just changed, because the way in which the president and really his administration are doing politics is very different from anything we've seen before, we do see the opposition, whether it's Democrats, by the way, or whether it's dissident Republicans, or whether it's anybody in society, an independent who doesn't like what's going on, people aren't sure how to adjust to the rules. So this, I suppose, we have in common with the Russians. We don't have the excuse of a chaotic economy. We're not living through that kind of disaster. But we are living through a moment when people don't know what the new rules are. How do we reach people in this new media system? How do we create new kinds of organizations? I mean, we really do need now not just the Democratic Party, but a broader coalition, almost a democracy movement that will be focused on not just restoring, but reforming our institutions and giving back power to the people, taking it away from the executive. And I don't think either the politicians, or with maybe some exceptions in your studio, I don't think most of them have thought this through yet. So what are the new tactics? How do we think differently? And how do we start to articulate different kinds of goals? Mm-hmm. It might take some time before people are able to adjust.